Hey everyone, thank you all for coming today. It's great to see everyone here and awesome for you guys to be able to see a new face on the stage as well. Not as smart or as intelligent as Omar, but I'm sure I'll start off the conversation for you guys and things will get more exciting. Thank you everyone for being here today. It's awesome I think one of the coolest things about these events is seeing some familiar faces every event and then seeing some new faces here as well, joining the ecosystem and growing. We have some exciting partners who have joined the Shardus ecosystem, such as one of the local consultancies here that Rasik and Kamish run called Arcadia Group, who are now working with Shardus and helping our teams build products and different projects with our Shardus infrastructure. And how many people of you here haven't been to a Shardus event before or heard of Shardus before today? Great, so a majority of you have heard of Shardus, but for those who haven't, Shardus aims to solve the problem of scalability, decentralization, and security within blockchain. If you look at a lot of the different infrastructure in the blockchain space you have today, people are making a premature investment in the hope that they will be able to be scalable and solve the efficiency problems that they would face if they brought on 100 million users and had thousands of transactions each day. And so at Shardus, we envision a world where there are public applications being used globally with extreme data throughput, and Shardus is using state sharding and different technologies such as a new consensus algorithm to produce infrastructure that supports linearly scalable applications. And you know, we have the idea. That's only the first part of any business, is coming up with a great idea, but the most important part is having a team that can actually execute. So again, for those of you who don't know anyone on our team or haven't been to a Shardus event before, we have a great leader, Omar Syed. He's the co-founder of Shardus and has 25 years of experience building distributed systems. One of the things I think that's most exciting about Omar is the fact that he built a board game called Arima, which he spent about 15 years building and managing. Arima challenged the AI industry to build a bot that beats humans in a board game. That was sponsored by Elon Musk in 2005, and it took about 15 years for the AI industry to actually build a bot that could beat humans in that board game, and engulfed the AI industry. Different researchers at universities like Stanford and Harvard wrote research papers on it. So he's very experienced, built applications for Yahoo that they've filed patents on. We have a great team here, very dedicated as well. Kyle actually learned about the opportunity at Shardus and picked up his bags and moved from California out here just to work on this. So very skilled team working at companies like Yahoo, Zynga, and NASA, and great idea. We're coming to the final quarters where the Shardus infrastructure is almost complete. So last quarter we demonstrated linear scalability within a network that was built using Shardus. And now that we're starting to get the infrastructure layer covered, we want to start presenting different applications that are being built with Shardus and show you guys all how you can interact with the networks built using Shardus. So today, Omar will be talking a little bit more about Liberdis, which is an application that is being built with Shardus, the first application we're building, and then cover some other things as well, like the new partners we're working with and what you can expect from Shardus in the coming months. Omar, if you want to take over, that'd be great.
All right, thank you very much for that introduction, Greg. And thank you everyone for coming out. Starting to see more and more new faces here. And you know, I think more people are starting to hear about Shardus. So every quarter we do a presentation to let the community know where we're at, what we've been working on, and what we plan to do going forward. So this is probably like our 6th quarterly presentation. So how many of you have heard of blockchain? Okay, good. So for those that have never heard about it, you know, you probably want to Google it and find out, because I'm not going to be able to explain it to you right now. But in a way, some people call it like a glorified database. It's, you know, in some ways it is kind of like that. It provides a lot of redundancy, you know, distribution, and decentralization. And so typically if you have any kind of database, and the data that it's holding is important, you always have to protect that database, right? So a lot of times companies will make multiple copies of that database, and then they have to keep certain copies going and keep it hot so that if one site or one server goes down, you always have other servers that can pick up and keep the availability and have it always accessible. What blockchain added to that when Satoshi introduced Bitcoin was making these databases decentralized, right? So companies knew how to create networks of nodes where you have lots of replicas and keeping them synchronized, but they were all owned by the same company. And so it didn't provide a lot of decentralization. You would have to depend on that one company to be doing the right thing, right? So what Satoshi introduced with Bitcoin was how can we make this network of nodes decentralized. And so that's been the real big breakthrough over the last decade. And we're starting to see people recognizing the importance of that breakthrough, and more industries are seeing that, hey, instead of just having our databases be like siloed where only the people within our company can access it, why not make them such that they're more decentralized and multiple entities can access those databases. And in a way it's similar to what happened with the World Wide Web back in the early 1990s. Companies had lots of databases and information, but only within the company you could access it. When the web came out, it allowed them to make those databases accessible to the rest of the world, right? And open those up. And that's what's happening now with blockchain technologies. Companies are able to have more parties interacting on those same databases. So Shardus is the software that you would use to create a blockchain that needs basically unlimited scaling, has a high level of decentralization, is energy efficient, and it's easy to build and deploy. So actually, if you can get all of these four things, now it's kind of like the holy grail, right, of blockchain technology. Current systems are very limited on their ability to scale. And as like networks like Bitcoin and Ethereum grow, what tends to happen is they go from being a very decentralized network to more and more centralized as the resources needed to run the nodes become higher and higher, and fewer people are able to participate. Also, energy is a big factor. A lot of the networks out there right now are using proof of work and spending a lot of cycles on energy. And also the other thing is that if you want to build an application using blockchain, it's not very easy right now. So what a lot of people do is they just go to systems like Ethereum, where all you have to do is write a smart contract and deploy it on an existing blockchain. But what if your application was such that it needed a lot more resources? Like, you don't want to be impacted by other applications. You need to like scale up, and you don't want to be sort of like using the same network that everybody else is. Well, it's not easy to build networks like that right now. And Shardus is trying to make that a lot easier. So from the very beginning, we've focused on designing Shardus so that it'll meet these kind of goals, right? So in order to provide like unlimited scaling, what you really have to do is build a system from the ground up where adding more nodes to the system will allow it to process more transactions, will allow it to hold more data. And that's referred to in the distributed system worlds as linear scalability, right? So as you add more nodes, you get more throughput. And it's also referred to as horizontal scaling. So designing a system like that is not easy, especially trying to make a system like that decentralized and, you know, like Byzantine fault tolerant and so forth. So that's been one of the holy grails for this whole blockchain space, is trying to build a system that can scale linearly. The other thing that you want to do is have the maximum amount of decentralization, and to achieve that, what's needed is the ability for people to run nodes that do not require a lot of resources. And even as the network grows, you want the nodes to not have to like keep growing in terms of how much resources you need to run that node. Because if that happens, then fewer and fewer people will be able to participate in the network, and then the network will become, you know, like more and more centralized because fewer parties are participating. So you don't want things like, you know, pools like you see like in Bitcoin and Ethereum and things like that. You want every node participating to be very independent and be able to, you know, run without having to pool together with other nodes. Also, you want to maximize the efficiency of your system, right? So it's definitely, you know, the amount of energy that you use to do the consensus. If you're spending a lot of energy, you're gonna need to pay for that somehow or another. And a lot of time that translates to your transaction fees being higher, right? So if you look at the Bitcoin network, when it gets really popular, the transaction fees can be, you know, $20, $100, you know, just to send something, and and you need that in order to pay for all the energy that's being spent on keeping that network going. So if you're not spending as much on the energy, that'll actually translate into lower costs for the users of the network. And, you know, you have to optimize the use of your nodes, you know, make optimum use of the CPU, the memory, the storage space. You don't want to be spending your CPUs just burning cycles to prove, you know, that you have consensus. And, you know, in the long run, you know, efficient systems are more sustainable, right? So if we want these networks to be sustainable long term, I really believe that they have to be efficient. So we envision that in the next, you know, maybe 10, 20 years, the world is going to have blockchain-based decentralized networks that span the globe, and that, you know, almost everybody in the world is using it, right? Currently, over the last 20 years, you know, networks like Twitter and Facebook have grown to, you know, bring on billions of users. Well, I think that's going to happen with decentralized networks over the next 10 to 20 years. And how do we scale these systems in order to sustain that kind of, you know, number of users and the amount of transactions that would be going through those networks? So that's, you know, what we're focusing on, and those are the kind of use cases that we're designing for. You know, so if you imagine if there was really a global world currency that everybody in the world used, you know, now you've got, you know, 7 billion people on that network, and almost every day everybody's going to use that network, so you're going to have millions of transactions going through that network. If we eventually get to a world where we have a global decentralized identity system where the identities are, issued based on a web of trust as opposed to issued by, say, a government. Those kind of networks can scale very fast to allow a lot of people to be able to get an identity. So there's like billions of people in the world right now who don't have identity. But if you did create networks like that, how would you scale and handle this kind of traffic? So, and then there's lots of other use cases like social networks and coins that are maybe issued by a central bank or a country, and also lots of enterprise applications within companies. So to build this software, what we've done is we've put together a team, and we've been focusing on building this for about 2 years now. And what we've done is given our token called a Shardus token, which is ERC20 token on the Ethereum network. We've given that to our developers, and they work on the project and receive the tokens. And we have not done like any kind of ICO where we're actually selling our token in exchange for USD or Bitcoin or anything like that. And so, that allows us to be able to focus more on our project. And if you have the people that are building the project having that kind of belief in what they're doing, I think that adds a lot to the success of the project, right? So there's, we don't just get this influx of, millions of dollars and then, we go on vacation, right? So, if you guys have followed like what's happened with a lot of these ICOs, especially in like 2017, they raised millions of dollars of, funding, and then you go and look at their, GitHub repo, and there hasn't been any activity, right? So, they just like make off with it and don't produce anything for it. So we're very vested in what we're doing. We're focused on building this and staying with it to the end. So that allows us to not have to waste our time and resources on trying to do fundraising, and it's a better, alignment of the incentives so that the project is successful. So what are these tokens going to be used for? So the Shardus tokens that are being given out now to those who contribute to the project, in the future, those will be needed to license the Shardus software. So there's two ways you can license the Shardus software. One is you can acquire a license token by sending Shardus tokens to our smart contract, and it will burn those Shardus tokens and issue you a license token. And that's provable on the Ethereum blockchain that you acquired a license. The other way is that if you're launching your own network with Shardus, you can actually give a percentage of your coins on that network to the Shardus token holders. And that's actually kind of a win-win situation, because when you start a new network and launch it, you want to attract people to start using your network. And if you give coins on your network to Shardus token holders, those people will be incentivized to come and use your network as well. So that's basically the use for the Shardus tokens is software licensing. So I mentioned here, like in this slide, one of the things that you can build with Shardus is Liberdis, and that's one of the things that we've been focusing on now this past quarter is building Liberdis. And Liberdis is the first application that is using Shardus. So Shardus takes care of, handling the network layer, the protocol, the consensus, and anybody that wants to build a decentralized application can use Shardus and focus, exclusively on the application layer. And so that's what we're doing with Liberdis, is using Shardus to build Liberdis, and we're able to make a lot of headway with that in just the last 3 months. So Liberdis itself is basically a payment network with the coin. It's going to show fast, efficient, scalable payments. We're designing it so that it's very user-friendly. It uses usernames instead of these long cryptic addresses that people have been using. It allows end-to-end encrypted messaging between users. It also has a DAO and a governance system built in so that the community can vote on changing the network parameters. So you can vote on things like, well, maybe we should increase the transaction fees, or maybe we should change how much reward the nodes receive. Those kind of things are not like hard-coded and burned into the network. They're actually configurable and flexible so that the community can change that, if they see that they have different needs in the future. And so once we start the Liberdis network, and that'll be hopefully by middle of this year, people will be able to add nodes to that network and mine Liberdis coins. But it won't require getting like specialized hardware like ASICs and GPUs. You'll be able to use like a VPS server or a Raspberry Pi and connect that to the network and be able to provide a node to the Liberdis network. And so we have a website for Liberdis. It's liberdis.com, and you can read about what our vision is there, and follow that to keep up with the project. The other thing that we're planning to do is start to have like community meetings going forward for Liberdis in the future, so that we get feedback from the community on how it should work and what the parameters should be when we launch it. So the roadmap for Shardus, we started back in towards the end of 2017, and then we started doing these quarterly presentations in 2018. And we've demonstrated the consensus algorithm, we've demonstrated our distributed ledger working, and then over the last 2 quarters we've actually demonstrated sharding. First, sharding working in a static network where the nodes are not coming in and out, and then later we demonstrated sharding in a dynamic network where nodes could be added and nodes could be leaving the network, and the network stays sharded. And that then allows you to demonstrate linear scaling, where as more nodes were added to the network, you actually saw that the network transaction speeds went up. And if you go back and look at our quarterly presentation, which is on YouTube, look at the one for quarter 3 2019, and we demonstrated linear scaling. And this quarter we've been focusing on building the Liberdis server, and that's going to be the main thing that we demonstrate for you today. And then going forward over the next 2 quarters, we're going to be demonstrating, we're going to be putting up a test net and then eventually launch a Liberdis mainnet. So quarter 4 status, what we've done is basically focused on building Liberdis. So we have a website, as I mentioned, has a white paper there that you can learn more about what Liberdis is trying to do. We've been focusing on the development of the Liberdis server and also developing a front end GUI to interact with the Liberdis network using just like a mobile phone and browser. Also, we've been working on the Shardus global server, and we're adding what we call an archive server, and that will help make the consensus nodes not have to be so beefy and have a lot of resources, because they can offload a lot of the data that they're holding over to the archive servers. Also, we've been working on improving our data repair and having that work more smoothly in the sharded network. And we've been doing a lot of just general additions to making the code more robust. Also, this quarter, we've made some partnerships with some development partners. So what started happening is we started getting projects coming to Shardus saying, hey, we have this idea of a distributed network that we want to build, and we think that Shardus would be a good platform for us to use to build that, and can we get started? And we want to have our team focus on building Shardus. So what we decided to do was partner with some companies that provide blockchain consulting services. And now these clients can then work with those blockchain consulting companies, and we can focus on supporting those consulting companies, and then they can focus on making sure that the clients are able to get their project developed. So we partnered with Arcadia Group. They're here today with us, Rasik and Kamesh. We partnered with Ellipsis. They're also based in Dallas. Aliaga wasn't able to make it today. We're also partnered with Mobile Programming, which is actually a company based out of California. And they're actually a pretty big company. They have a really large development team, and so they can pretty much handle like a lot of projects. And then also this quarter we became a startup that's working with the Startup Council. So the Startup Council is a group in Seattle that helps startups in terms of providing them guidance and advice. So we're working with Adnan Siddiqui, who's the founder of the Startup Council. And as I mentioned, we've had several projects coming to us interested in using Shardus. And a lot of these projects are in the very early stages, trying to raise funding and so forth. But two projects that have really started to get started with developing prototypes is Blood, which is a project in the healthcare space, and another project called the African Payment Network. So these guys are actually working with our development partners to start prototyping. And this is kind of early for us because we weren't really expecting to have companies using Shardus until after we launched Liberdis. But it's great that there's a lot of demand out there for what we're building. And also I was invited to do a presentation this past quarter at the Muslim Tech Conference that was held here in Dallas. And I gave a talk about blockchain applications and how blockchain technology is going to impact a lot of what we normally do on the internet, and also introduce Shardus there. And in terms of our token distribution, here's the graph of how much we're basically tokens we're putting out month to month. And so we're right around close to like 16 million Shardus tokens that are out there. So the Shardus project uses a 10 cent per token value when it gives the tokens to our developers and contributors. And so based on that, our market cap would be like around $1.6 million. So next quarter, our plan is basically to start putting a Liberdus test network up, having that available so that people can run nodes and start joining that network. That'll help us, make the Liberdus application more solid. Also, we're going to start doing like community meetups so that more people could become engaged with what we're doing with Liberdus and provide input on where Liberdus what kind of features Liberdus should provide, and what kind of parameters we want to have when we launch it. And we're going to be continuing to work on the Liberdus server and improving the front-end client. Also, we're going to be working on the Shardus side, improving the global server, adding the archive server to that so that the consensus nodes are more lightweight, improving our data repair algorithm, and also making the code more robust. So with that, I think we're ready to start doing a demonstration of Liberdus. So just to give you an overview, we're going to spin up a network of, I think, 40 nodes on AWS. They're like T2 micros, so those are like some of the weakest nodes that you can get on AWS. They have like 1 gig of RAM, 1 CPU, and we'll be spinning up 40 of those nodes, and they're distributed across the world in different data centers. And then you'll be able to use your phones and open up a web browser and go to app.liberdus.com and then be able to interact with that network. So who's going to start up the network? Amr?
Take questions?
Yeah, while you're doing that, so while Amr is getting the network started, if you guys have any questions for me, I can answer those questions.
So one quick thing before, we're going to start up the network first, and then after that, point your phones to app.liberdus.com. I'm going to show the network coming up, and I'll give you the go-ahead to go to app.liberdus.com when it's ready.
Yeah, Greg.
I just wanted to say one thing, with you all being here today, this is a new and exciting technology that you guys have the opportunity to be a part of very early on. And so I decided to donate some of my time each week to working with the project. And so Omar, I was just wondering from you, what is the most beneficial thing that anyone in this room today could do coming out of this presentation? What are their options for getting involved with Shardus?
Right, so Shardus is set up as an association where anybody could join us and contribute in any way that they whatever skills that you have. Like, for example, if you're a programmer, or maybe you're a marketing person, or maybe you can write content. There's lots of different skills that people have, and if you connect with us and ask us, say like, hey, I'd like to help Shardus project and earn some tokens. We could talk and find out what you're good at and see, if that's something that you could help us out with. So that's, definitely, it depends on your abilities, and there's definitely room for lots of different things as the project grows.
What if someone decides that after this they want to build with Shardus, build applications with that?
Yeah, so definitely get in touch with us if you have some idea for a blockchain project in mind, or somebody that's working on a blockchain project. Reach out to me or Greg. I can be reached at omar@shardus.com, and Greg is at greg@shardus.com, and we can start discussing with you what your application is and if it would be a good fit for Shardus, and hopefully get you on a path to be able to build your decentralized network. How's that going?
Yeah, pretty good. So I just started the network. It's deploying to AWS right now. Shortly, we'll start seeing nodes pop up on this screen as gray dots, and then as they join the network, they'll become green. Once we have a couple nodes that are green, I'll open up app.libris.com on the screen so you guys can see kind of what it's like too, and you can open up on your phone too once that's ready. So there they are, nodes popping up. I started a network of 40 nodes. Once we get some of those going green, I'll open up the app page and we can start interacting with it. You can see kind of like what the Libris application and like features are going to be like. So it's our first guy. A couple more going to come.
So let me kind of explain what that dot means. So each dot represents a different AWS node, and the ones that are gray right now are waiting to join the network. So you always need one original node to start up the network, and that's that green one that you see there now. So it's starting up a new network, and within that circle you'll see like there's 3 smaller circles, and they're different colors. So those smaller circles kind of represent the internal data within that node, and where that node is at in terms of the data that it's holding. It's really just a hash of the data that the node is holding, and represented as a color. So the other nodes that are out there in the perimeter are going to be submitting join requests to that green node, and that node will use an algorithm to select the best node, which is kind of based on a random number, and those nodes will then be allowed to join the network. And as those nodes join the network, you'll see them turning yellow, and so those nodes that are yellow are now synchronizing their data with the green node and coming up to speed on the network. And once they've synchronized, then you'll see those nodes turning green as well.
All right, so a lot of them are syncing up right now. The minute like some of these start turning green, I'm going to pull up app.libris.com on the computer that you can also pull up on your phone.
Yeah, Greg, do you have?
While we're waiting for this, since Commission or Sick are here from our Arcadia group, I was wondering if they could talk for a minute about what they do. It's like 2 seconds.
Sure, yeah.
Arcadia is a blockchain.
Hold on, let me give you a mic here. Actually, why don't you come on up here? I can't take this mic out, so I know this is not planned, but.
Hello to the people on the live stream as well. Yeah, Arcadia is a blockchain software development company. We focus primarily on privacy-preserving technology, scaling solutions, and network communications. We build primarily on cryptocurrencies that are focused in that area, and we recently started working in enterprise solutions as well. So if you guys have any questions, definitely come by after the talk.
So Resik didn't mention, but they actually provide consulting to some of the biggest coins that are out there, and they're actually experts in ZK snark technology, which is used in privacy-preserving coins like Zcash and Zcoin. So, and they're based right here out of Dallas, so it's amazing that we have such talent here. So it looks like we've got a network going. Amr, you want to?
Yeah, so now that the network's up, go ahead and take out your phones and go to app.libris.com. Right over here. And once you're there, you'll get this getting started page. It's kind of self-explanatory, made it a little simple to use. Basically, you can create an account. I'll make one for this computer right here. If I by clicking that blue button. And I'll call it stage. And once you've created an account, you'll be able to send messages to other people who've created accounts, transfer coins. It first brings you to your wallet page that shows you how many LibreDis tokens you have. We've initially given everybody 5,000. The messaging.
Now, I just want to mention, if you haven't already created your account, try to type in stage and create the same account. You should see that it'll tell you that this is taken already. So your browser is actually going and talking to the LibreDis network and making those queries as you type in the letters and able to detect that.
So we've got our main wallet page here. You can send messages to other people who have accounts here. I think I got one right here. It's a stage account. There's also voting in this application.
Hold on, let me take over because I have a routine of how to go through this thing. Okay, so first go back to the coin page. Yeah. So if you click on receive, click on the receive button there if you've logged in. You can see there that there's two ways that you can tell people how they should send you coins, right? So one is the old way that all these networks use, where there's this big long address for where your coins are to be sent. But with Shardus, you can also just give somebody your username and say, send me coins at Omar, right? And so that's much easier to use. And the way that works is, on the Shardus network, we actually map the hash of your username with your actual address. And so your client will actually go look it up and be able to find out what your address is as soon as somebody types in a username. Okay, if you can go back now, and then now if you can go to the send page, if somebody wants to receive some coins, announce your username, and then I'm Leon. Okay.
All lowercase? Yeah. Alrighty.
Okay, so if you notice, as soon as he typed Leon, it queried the network to see if there is an account there for Leon, and it told you that this is a valid username. So if you made a mistake in typing your friend's name, like type in some name that doesn't exist. Go ahead, tab. So it'll tell you that right under there that there's no account out there with that name, right? So you're not going to be accidentally sending coins to some random address. Oh, dude, you better. Okay, so how many are you sending there?
Send about 100 coins.
Okay, so he sent 100 coins to Leon. So in a minute here, we should see that. Well, not even in a minute, in a few seconds actually. So yeah, we can see that the coins got transferred to Leon, and Leon, you should see it in your phone.
Yeah, I see several transactions.
Oh, other people have been sending you coins as well. All right, cool. So probably like within a matter of 5 to 10 seconds, the coins are transferred. Okay, so the next thing we want to show you is end-to-end encrypted messaging. So if you go to the message tab, send a message to Leon. So he types in Leon, and then it'll query the network, see that Leon is there, and now he types a message to Leon, hits send. So for a few seconds, it'll show that it's pending.
This actually takes place on this network. Like you'll see that transaction go through here.
Yeah, those little tiny red dots that you see on the AWS network, those are transactions flowing through the network. And so Leon, did you get the message?
I got the message.
Okay, so that message was actually end-to-end encrypted. So we have the client doing the encryption and then sending that message into the network. And then when Leon receives it, he's able to decrypt that message. Now, it's up to the client. If you don't want to encrypt your message, you could send them plain text if you want, or you could use whatever form of encryption that you wanted to use. So it's really all within the client. And so Leon sends a message back. So it's a lot like a texting system, but now you can use. So once LibreDis is launched, people will be able to use it for sending messages to each other, right? Now, another interesting thing about this is that there's a toll that you can set on receiving messages, right? So like if you're a celebrity and everybody knows your name, and you don't want them sending, I mean, you're going to have millions of people sending messages to you if they could send you messages directly. So you set a really high toll, right? Like, so if you go under settings and then toll, you can see that it's currently set by default to 1 coin, right? You can change that to like say 100 coins and hit submit.
It's now expensive to talk to the stage.
Yeah, so go ahead and try to send a message to stage, and it'll cost you 100 coins to send that message. So you can set a toll on people sending you messages. That way you don't get a lot of spam, right? So they're only going to send you messages if it really matters, right? And so now your inbox isn't going to be filled with all these useless messages. Now the other thing is, well, maybe you don't want your friends to have to pay this toll every time they try to send you a message. So like go over to Leon's page, like go under messaging, go to the message to Leon, and see that little plus sign over there to the top right. We can add Leon as a friend by clicking that plus sign, and now we've just added Leon as a friend. So if Leon sends us a message, he's not going to be charged a toll. So people can add friends, and they don't have to pay toll to each other to send messages, but anybody outside your friends group that wants to send you a message is going to have to pay a toll to send you a message. So those are like two very, very huge things, right? Being able to send value to each other over a decentralized network. I mean, that's what all Bitcoin is about. And then being able to send messages to each other. That's a huge area. Like that's what WhatsApp and Telegram and all those guys do. But we're actually building a decentralized network which can actually scale to be able to handle those kind of applications at scale, right? So when more and more people start using this network, we don't have to go back to the drawing board and try to figure out, well, how do we handle 1 million users now? And then, a year down the line, how do we handle 1 billion users, right? We just have to add more nodes to our network, and we'll have higher transaction throughput. Okay, so some other features that we're going to show you is that this network is set up as a decentralized autonomous organization. That's a word that you're going to start hearing more and more as we go into the future. They're referred to as DAOs. So a DAO is a community of people that are sort of working together to make decisions on some project or some thing that they're working towards. So in a way, you could think of everybody that's holding coins on the LibreDis network as a community, and that's like a decentralized autonomous community. And they can now decide to affect the parameters of this network, right? Like for example, there's transaction fees when you send a transaction through the network. Well, how much should those fees be, right? Like on the Bitcoin network, those fees are actually fluctuating based on the amount of traffic that's going in the Bitcoin network. Other networks have those like hard-coded. So with Liberdis, we have left that very flexible so that going forward, the community can decide what that fee should be. So Amir, why don't you go under the economy tab and go under new change proposal. So if you go on that page, you'll see that there's all these different parameters that the current network currently has and what their current value is, and you can propose a new value. So currently a transaction fee is 0.01 coin. That's at the very bottom, if you see that. Let's change that to like, make it 1 coin. So now every transaction that you submit to the network is going to use up 1 coin. And where's that 1 coin going? It's actually getting burned. So it doesn't actually go like to the node operators. The node operators actually get newly minted coins all the time. The transaction fee coins are just lost. And now, Amir, once we get around to the proposal window, in fact, I think you're in it now. Hurry up and submit this. Hurry up before it runs out. Okay, it didn't go through because Kyle said that we have to wait until towards the end of the window when you submit it. So if you try it again, it'll go. It might take a little while, but yeah, right now we have an issue that we're working on where the proposed transaction needs to be submitted towards the later part of the proposal window. So just hang on in there. Are we in the proposed window? I'll go ahead and submit it. See if you missed it. All right, I will have to wait around till it comes back. But basically, there's 4 phases to a voting cycle. There's a window of time that's called propose. Then there's a window of time that's the actual voting period where people can see what has been proposed and vote on it. And then there's a grace period where after the voting has been tallied, there's an amount of time for everybody to become familiar with what the new settings are going to be. And then there's a 4th window that's called apply, and that's where the new changes actually get applied, and they stay that way. We right now have this whole cycle to go about every 5 minutes. In a real scenario, you would want that to be like maybe 3 months or 6 months or maybe a year, depending on what the community decides should be the right amount of time for changing the parameters. So we're right now going through the voting period, I think. So if you click on that little tab, it'll show you all the different 4 windows, the little toggle there. And you can see that we're in the voting window right now. And how much more time do we have in that?
22 seconds.
Okay. Yeah. So then once the voting window is done, then we go into a grace period. And then after that, then the apply period. Now, meanwhile, why don't you go back and demonstrate some more things with, let me see. Well, no, let's go and demonstrate the registration of the email. So if you go under settings, there's a link there called register email. Now, here you can enter an email address and hit submit. And what's going to happen is the Liberdis network is actually going to send you an email with a verification code. And you'll need to enter that verification code on the next screen to prove that you own that email address. Now, you're probably all very familiar with having to do that every time you go to a website, right, and you create a new account on a website, they'll send you a verification email, and you will either click on a link or copy and paste that code that you received to prove to the site that the email address that you gave is a legitimate email address. Now this is a blockchain actually doing this, right? So the reason why we can do this on the Liberdis network is because every Liberdis node is able to go out and hit APIs on the internet. And so we just have an API set up where that node can use to send an email. So that makes it possible for networks built with Liberdis to be able to do these kind of things. You would not be able to do this if you created an app on the Ethereum network. It has no way to go to do anything outside of that network. But with Liberdis, you can actually create your application level so that it can hit these endpoints. Were you able to register, Amr?
No, we'll see.
Oh, you going to check your email?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Was it? Did anybody try that? Try to send your get an email sent to you and then verify the code? You did? Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, it went through.
So, okay. Yeah, submitting that, checking validation code. Okay, cool. So now if you go back to the settings, register email. And so now it says your email address has already been validated. Now you might be wondering like, hey, I don't want my email address to be sitting on the blockchain where everybody can find it. So actually what happens is you never actually store your email address on the blockchain. What happens is the hash of your email address is stored on the blockchain. But now that it's there, you can prove to somebody else that, hey, this is a legitimate email address that I'm giving you, right? So if somebody comes to me, like say Kyle says my email address is this, Kyle would be able to use his phone and show me a QR code, and I would be able to scan his QR code, pick up what email address Kyle says it is, and so Kyle is okay with telling me exactly what his email address is. Then I can take the hash of that and check on the blockchain that it matches with Kyle's account. And so now I know that Kyle isn't just making up a one-time email address that he's telling me and not using his real email address, right? So that's the way it works. Your email address isn't actually stored on the blockchain, but the ability to prove that that's your email address is stored on the blockchain. All right, so do we want to try to see where we are in the funding or the change proposal cycle? Yeah, all right, so
So if you guys noticed how I sent staged 80,000 tokens,
oh,
we all started out with 5,000 tokens, right? So basically, when the network started up, I did.
100 closer to
I created a funding proposal, and that funding proposal I paid if you go to the funding page, funded projects. Oh, something happened. All right, so.
it's not staying there.
Yeah, demos, right? Well, it was there for a second. It said give Kyle money, but.
Oh, it's not able to get the voting window, which is why it's going back to that.
Yeah, typical demo, right? But essentially, I submitted one of these funding proposals, which is you submit it to the network. Everyone can see how much funds you're proposing, and people can vote on it. They can vote to either accept or reject that proposal. So for developers who want to get paid for contributing or working on this project in some way, they can submit developer funding proposals. And the people, the users, can decide whether to accept or reject it. And by voting on these funding proposals or these economy proposals, it acts as kind of a deflationary mechanic. So those tokens are taken out of circulation. So if you want something to get passed or if you want something to fail, you really have to you really have to want it, because you're going to lose those tokens.
All right, thanks for explaining that.
I got a screenshot here because it kept on switching away on the page. I just took a screenshot. But here's the Kyle just talked about funded projects and how you put one out there. Here's the one that he put out there.
So
And this is what it would look like.
I immediately voted on it for 100 coins, so it would pass. And that's how I got enough money to be able to stage 80,000 tokens.
Yeah, so those are the two main things that a DAO can do is it can change the parameters of the network, and it can vote on funding projects using the Libertas coin. So that's in the future. Shardus itself is going to be submitting proposals to get funded using Libertas coins, and that's how we're going to be keeping the Shardus software maintained, as well as the Libertas software. But then Libertas is going to become a platform that can be used to create lots of other decentralized networks, which we can fund using Libertas, right? So we might, start, I don't know, let's say a decentralized DNS service or something like that, and we decide to fund that, right? So new coins would be created to fund that project. That project, once it's launched, would then give some of its coins back to the Libertas coin holders and the Shardus coin holders. And that's, the way it pays back for being able to use this technology. And the holders of these tokens then, get something for having supported the project. So, now we've kind of created a decentralized way to fund lots of projects in the future. Those are, kind of the main features that we wanted to show you. This is really like cutting edge stuff that we made, and we just got a lot of this working and stabilized, semi-stabilized this past week. But hopefully, as we work on it more this quarter, it's going to get hardened, and pretty soon you'll be able to spin up nodes, join the Libertas testnet, and earn Libertas testnet tokens for now. And then later on, once the actual network is launched, then you'll be able to actually earn Libertas coins and participate in the Libertas community and vote on issues and things that come up for proposals. One thing I want to mention about how the voting works in our system is that when you vote on proposals, you're actually going to be burning those coins. You're not going to get those coins back. So if you're a millionaire in this system, and you're not just going to be able to say like, oh, I'm a millionaire, therefore every proposal that comes by, I can vote it whichever way I want. No, you're actually going to burn up your coins as you vote for things. You're not going to get those coins back. So even if you're a millionaire, you're going to think about, do I really want to vote on this issue, right? If you're not interested in that issue, you wouldn't vote on it, right? So that's the system that we've used. And that also helps to reduce the number of Libertas coins in circulation, right? As the people that are interested on those issues vote on, making those issues get accepted. So that's basically the model. So does anybody have any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
How much of this data is stored on chain?
Let me give you the thing.
So how much of this data is stored on chain? So let's have say at the beginning of the process where we created the usernames, Bitcoin has something similar in development, payment names. which are under, basically you create a username and you connect it to your address. But one of the problems they run into is that they have to have a centralized server to store the usernames. How does that work on the side of Shardus and Liberdis?
Yeah, good question. So Risik is saying that with Bitcoin network, you can also kind of try to map a username with your Bitcoin address, but that mapping isn't actually done on the Bitcoin network. It's on a different system, and so that system is now another dependency, right? And that could like maybe not be as decentralized and so forth. So in Shardus, that mapping is stored on, well, not in Shardus, I'm sorry, Liberdis. That mapping of username to your address is actually stored in the Liberdis network. Leon, go ahead.
Just had a question on the tolls and fees, transaction fees. Those paid, will they go to the nodes or are they burned?
Those actually go to the users.
Yeah, so the transaction fees, so there's two types of transaction fees here. The transaction fees, there's a fee for every single transaction. Now, if you want, you could set that fee to 0. Like the community could decide to set that fee to 0, and there wouldn't be a fee. And then there's another fee for sending messages, right? So the toll fees, that's what we refer to them as, those actually go to the user that you're sending the message to, right? Now the transaction fees are actually burned, so they just remove those coins out of circulation. They don't go to the nodes that are providing resources to the network. However, the nodes that are providing resources to the network are paid on a daily basis from new coins that are created. So if by adjusting the node reward and adjusting what the transaction fees is, the network could be deflationary, or it could be inflationary. The community can control what the economy of the network is going to be like. Any other questions? Yeah. Let me give you the mic.
I was just wondering if the relations between nodes, is it static or is it dynamic? I saw when you started the presentation, I think you mentioned it's based on the random number. I was just wondering how does one node goes about selecting its neighbors?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So he's asking, how do the nodes know about other nodes, and are they assigned sort of like a static identification, or is that randomly assigned, and so forth? So in the Shardus network, every node does have an ID that it uses. That ID is created when that node picks a key pair. So that's a public key, private key. And when it joins the network, it submits that key, the public key, to the network, but the network uses that public key to assign it a randomly selected node ID. And so that way the node doesn't have any way of choosing what its node ID should be. And the node ID determines where in the network that node fits and what data it's holding when the network is sharded. So it's very important to ensure that the nodes are not able to select their own IDs, because in that, if that was possible, an attacker could try to place their nodes all in one shard and try to do a shard attack. Any questions? Yeah, Greg. Go ahead.
I just had a non-technical question of, you've shown us a lot of different features in here, like proposing funds and then different network parameters and things like that. And I was just curious if you see Liberdis as something that's adopted like in the mainstream and it's used worldwide. What do you see this replacing, and how does it benefit us? Like, what change do you see it making on the world?
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I keep forgetting. All right, so Greg is asking, like, if Liberdis catches on and it becomes really popular, what is this replacing? So right now, I think there's not really anything out there that is similar to these type of systems. I mean, of course, you do have, you know, the payment networks that are out there, like Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, Dash, you know. So it's kind of in that space, just because it allows you to transfer value over the internet. Also, it provides messaging. So actually, we don't have any blockchain networks right now that are well known for providing messaging between users. So it would be adding something in that area. Also, there are not a lot of well-known networks that are like decentralized autonomous organizations. I mean, there are some out there that are being built now, but they haven't gotten like, say, millions of users using them. And so Shardus would also be, or I'm sorry, Liberdis would also be introducing this, you know, something new where people would be able to participate in a decentralized autonomous organization.
Yeah, but for like the people that are watching online that may not be from the blockchain space or know too much about it, like what is the benefit there for replacing something like a central bank or anything like that? Like what disruption do you see is happening?
Well, you want me to talk like a libertarian now? All right, well, you know, basically this whole revolution that's going on with the increase in decentralization, it is going to, you know, sort of disrupt a lot of existing industries that are out there. You know, first and foremost is going to be like the financial industry. I mean, maybe it's not going to like replace them, but they're going to have to wake up and adapt to this change that's coming, right? And so they're going to it's not going to be business as usual, right? So if they want to stay alive, they have to look at what's going on and say, well, how can we fit into this new change that's coming? So that's the finance industry. But as blockchains become more scalable, then we're, you know, able to affect other industries as well, right? So, you know, all these like social networking sites, they're going to have to wake up and say, hey, you know, we've been like hoarding all this user data and you know, benefiting from it, you know, in the future, that's not going to be the business model that works, because people are going to want that they have control over the data, right? They're not going to want to just hand over that data and just, you know, some site benefiting from that. So it's going to disrupt all these social networks that are out there that are built on that, you know, business model. So there's a lot of change coming up in the future, but to make that change happen, we have to have that underlying technology that will, you know, enable this change. So.
Anyone else? Dude, Vitalik, I saw you raise your hand.
Okay, we'll take that as well.
So the question that I had was, since prices of the token fluctuate and you also have prices for participation for certain transactions, won't that mean that if, you know, the price of the token increases considerably, let's say, then that would essentially stop certain interactions from happening, right? Because the price is too high.
Yeah, so Adrian's asking, you know, what's going to happen if, like, say, the Liberdis coin prices increase a lot, and now, you know, let's say you had chose nodes to receive 100 tokens per day. Well, now if each token goes up in price and becomes like $1,000, that would be like $100,000 per day per node, right? So that'd be crazy. So that's one of the reasons why we've chosen to have the network parameters in Liberdis be so flexible. The community could vote to change those parameters, like how many tokens the nodes will receive each day. And by doing that, the community could choose to make the coin be more stable if they wanted to. It's kind of like the Federal Reserve, but it's not a centralized entity. It's like the whole community is going to be able to tweak parameters like the transaction fees and node rewards to control the supply and reduction of the coins in order to make that economy or the value of that coin go the way that the community wants. And so there may be times when they want it to be deflationary and the price increase, but then there may be other times where they might want it to be inflationary, or they decide to fund some project and they get a big influx of money pouring in because they funded this project and created a lot of new coins and so forth. So that could cause the price of the token to come down. But essentially, it's very flexible, right? And the community can control what the economics are going to be. And they could even tweak things where the transaction fees cancel out the node rewards. And now you basically have a very stable amount of coins that are in circulation. So somebody else had a question?
So you have mentioned several times in past presentations and this one that Shardus is also looking to potentially assist the social media platforms of the future, right? We're talking about how the business model the current platforms are using, whether it's the user content and selling that, all that, it's out of vogue, right? So a question that I have for you is that what do you see as the potential of Liberdis or Shardus in being able to, your token, for the public and for the private, it can buy licenses to use your platform, is that correct?
Right, the Shardus token will always be on the Ethereum network, and the Shardus token is what you need to be able to purchase a license. Now, the other way you can license it is you don't need to acquire Shardus tokens, but instead you give coins or tokens on a new network that you create back to Shardus token holders. So that's another way to do it as well.
Okay, so my question really, the reason why I bring this up is, let's imagine the future of social media platforms has to change their business model. They're now saying the content on the platform is really the asset itself. So they're going to say, okay, you can license your photos, you can license your videos, much like a Getty image does now, right? So how can potentially Shardus or Liberdis, you can say no if you're not looking this way, but how can your coin give a royalty-free license to an image, or a rights reserved or rights limited? Because it's a digital rights management, for maybe some of these coins or this blockchain.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think what you're alluding to is that in the future, individuals will own their data and they will be able to monetize that data, right? So now if I go and create an account on some site and give you access to some of that data, well, you should be sharing some of your profits back with me. So that itself could be a whole complete network. So Shardus is actually the engine that could power that kind of a network. And Liberdis is not positioning itself to be a data repository. But we actually talked to somebody recently that had this idea and was looking at potentially using Shardus as the platform to build a network where it becomes a data repository and allows users to be able to monetize their data by allowing different sites or different entities to access that data.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here and thinking through that with me. I appreciate it.
So do we have other questions? So, Greg, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just back to the question that was just asked. I just think for everyone online and here, it's really important just to remember that Liberdis is just the first application that is built with Shardus, but Shardus is essentially, as Omar mentioned, the underlying technology and the engine, and it covers that transactional layer. And so if you start to think about things like how people could be issued a license for their pictures in the future for other people to be able to use. I'm drawing a blank on what the name of the license you just said was, but that's all something that can be handled at like the application layer, right? Like when the developer is building the actual application, those are the type of things that they will choose to build into the social media network in the application.
Yeah, absolutely. So Shardus takes care of the networking, the protocol layer, the consensus layer, and you just have to focus on the application layer and defining what the transactions are going to be. Just like if you're going to build a website, you don't think about the HTTP protocol and the TCP/IP layer. All that is taken care of. You just define your APIs for what the website wants to do, right? And so you're focusing just on the application. That's what Shardus is providing. It's taking care of all of the other layers so that you can focus on just the application layer and defining the transactions. And so based on that, then depending on what type of application you're trying to build, whether it's a network for a data repository, or whether it's a decentralized autonomous organization, or whether it's a global supply chain, there can be lots of different networks that are launched using Shardus for various different applications, just like lots of different websites out there that are using, like say, Apache web server, and then using a MySQL database, and of course using TCP/IP and all that, right? So.
And another thing is a lot of people like in the decentralized finance space right now hype up the composability that Ethereum has and how you're able to integrate with all of these different applications built on top of the Ethereum virtual machine and have them all work together. Like with Shardus, because you're able to create your own application-specific blockchain network, you can also create other networks with a virtual machine on top of them, right? And have different applications work together. Like how would an application work with Shardus here if they wanted to, or with Liberdis here if they wanted to try to integrate with Liberdis?
If you wanted to integrate with Liberdis and transfer value from another network to Liberdis, the way you could achieve that is using a technology called cross-chain atomic swaps, whereby you transfer coins on one network and then another person transfer coins on the network that you want to transfer your value to. So that would allow Liberdis to be able to integrate with other networks at the value transfer level, right? Now, so maybe you go to another network because that's providing, like a data repository or something like that, right? And you do your value transfer or your actual application transactions on that network, and then once you're done, then you can transfer your value back over to the Liberdis network. So that's one way to integrate with it. The other way is that Liberdis actually provides APIs that are very similar to like APIs that websites provide, right? And so you can actually just hit APIs in the Liberdis network if you're building some application that wants to integrate with Liberdis. And if you want to build a system that integrates with outside data, you can actually have nodes in the Liberdis network, or actually with Shardus. Those nodes can go and talk to any other APIs that are offered out there on the internet. That's how we were able to demonstrate registering an email address, right? So the nodes in the Liberdis network were able to go out and hit an API to send you an email and then validate that it's correct.
Very cool. Thanks, Omar.
Yeah. So we have one more question. There.
Omar, I was wondering, is there any application layer for like storing data involved in here? Like, so like you write an application that has images or something like that. Is there like, is it able to like encrypt the images and stuff like that, or is it just a protocol for communication?
Well, so Shardus is, defining the protocol for the network, the consensus, and so forth. However, at the application layer, you can build those kind of networks, right? So already there are projects out there like, Storj, Filecoin, Siacoin that are working towards that. And so rather than starting from scratch, you may even be able to use some of those networks and integrate that back with Shardus or some other network that you create using Shardus. Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
I have a, it's called a tough question. So with the username concept, is there a cost associated with actually getting the username? And if not, is there any risk of someone going and creating a bunch of usernames just to fill up space on the network?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what if somebody, started squatting on all these usernames, like domain name registration kind of thing? Yeah, you could imagine, yeah. Right, and then also, causing a lot of space to be used. So right now, the way we implemented it, there isn't, but it's very easy to add a cost to doing that at the application layer, right? So like one thing you could do is you could say that in order to register this username, you have to submit that transaction along with some proof of work, or you could also have to make a payment in Liberdis coins, where the coins would then get burned. So that would add an economic cost to registering that name.
Also, on the atomic swap side, once Liberdis goes mainnet, Arcadia will be definitely using the Comet protocol to see if we can integrate to get hash time lock contracts working on Liberdis. Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, I would be really interested to see that.
Saying that now to hold myself accountable.
All right, awesome. Yeah, go ahead, Adrian.
Well, first I'm going to ask this question, and then if it's true, I'm going to have a follow-up. So, is the identity that you just demonstrated, is that part of the base protocol, or is it just part of the application?
That's part of the application. Yeah, that's not anything linked with Shardus itself.
Well, I guess I would ask this anyways. Never mind.
Okay, yeah, no problem. But yeah, that identity is, just completely at the application layer, right? I mean, you don't even need it. You could do transfers using just the full addresses that are, basically derived from your public keys. So you could do transfers that way as well. But the identity is completely at the application layer. And, in the future, if you want, you could also connect other data with that account that you've created, right? Like if you wanted to connect your phone number with it, or connect, like, hey, I also own this account on LinkedIn or Twitter. You could enter, like, say, your Twitter handle or your LinkedIn handle, and Shardus nodes could actually go and check to see, like, okay, do you actually own that, by asking you to put some content there that can be used to prove it, right? So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of other things that you can connect with that identity.
Okay, so what I wanted to ask was, how do you determine whether a feature should be part of the application layer and not just the base protocol layer?
Okay, yeah, that's a really good question. So how do you determine like what features of your overall network should be at the application layer and what features should be at the base Shardus layer? So what we've tried to do with Shardus is make it very modular and create a very clear distinction between the Shardus layer and the application layer. So in Shardus, we're handling, things like what the nodes need to do to join the network. But even within that, the application can impose requirements. For example, maybe you want a node joining the network to do a proof of work and submit that along with its join transaction. Or maybe you want the node to show that it owns some number of coins, right, in order to stake those coins to be part of the network. So the application can define a lot of things as well. But Shardus just provides you all the hooks in order to be able to define those things in the application. And we're basically doing like all the plumbing, right? And there's other things that you can control with configuration parameters, like what should the initial number of nodes be when the network launches, how many nodes per shard do you want? Those kind of things are more like Shardus level configurations, and those you can control through parameters that you set through configuration files. But we've tried to allow the application to define the majority of the parameters, and Shardus tries not to get in the way or restrict you in that. One of the things that you see with the current blockchain systems is they're like very tightly integrated in terms of like the consensus and the incentivization model are they're almost like one and the same, right? And so it makes it very hard to change that in the future if you ever need to. So with Shardus, we've tried to keep everything very flexible, and we're designing Shardus with the knowledge that, hey, applications are going to want to use this and define their own parameters for how much the node should get paid, how much the transaction fees should be, various different things. So, hey Samir, you have a question?
Hi, I actually have a question from a friend of mine who texted me the question.
Okay.
Yeah, he's saying that he loves Shardus, and it's the framework, that's his understanding, that allows us to build blockchain distributed applications.
Right.
Now, is this only for, how easy is it for us to use Shardus to build a private enterprise application using the Shardus framework?
All right, that's a good question. We've designed Shardus so that it'll be very easy to build and deploy. So we've chosen to use Node.js as the platform in which Shardus is built. And one of the reasons for doing that is because there are a lot of developers out there that know Node.js or know JavaScript. JavaScript is the #1 most used programming language out there. So a lot of people are familiar with that. So if you're familiar with how to program in Node.js, it'll be very, very simple for you to just do npm install Shardus and then require Shardus and then start calling the functions that Shardus provides and start defining what your server should be like and what your application should do. The other reason why we chose Node.js is because even though it's very easy to develop with, it's also very fast. It's there at the level of Java, right? So it's not as fast as C, but it's not as slow as other languages like Python or Perl and things like that. So it's actually run using a VM, and so it's very fast on the server side. and so once you've even built your network, we've also focused on trying to make it very easy to deploy the network. We already have built some tools that make it very easy for you to launch your network on AWS. And you can actually even launch a network of nodes on your local computer and play around with it and test it out, right? So you don't even need to be connected to a network. You could do this on a plane, right? Where you just, spin up a network of nodes on your own local computer and start working on building your application layer. And then once you're ready to deploy it, you can use some of the tools that we've developed to launch it on AWS. And in the future, we're going to build more tools for other, networks, like Google Cloud and Azure and so forth. Yes.
Just one other question. The other question I had was, do you have any, like as far as like using Node-RED, when you have plans at all to implement like the APIs into Node-RED so developers can easily just use the API functionality with it?
Let me see. So you're saying with Node.js, is it possible that developers can just use APIs to interact with it?
Node-RED? Are you familiar with Node-RED?
No.
Okay. So Node-RED is like very object oriented. So you can import in. It uses Node.js, and you can quickly develop applications with it. Through IBM has a big thing. If you go to a developer at IBM.com, it has access is free. You can download it locally, or you can run it on a server and such. But you can basically, they have modules. You can import a module, like example. I just recently imported, I got a Twitter developer thing, so I'm able to import all the Twitter APIs, and I can just put my API keys in, and I can send stuff out to Twitter, or you can access anything on the internet or anything that you want. So I was just wondering if something like that would be, you can also put drop-in functions, any kind of JavaScript functions. It's very object-oriented, but I don't know, it's a whole meeting on its own.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying now. So yeah, basically you could use something like that, and while you're developing your server for your application, you could use those features and use something like Node-RED to be able to access the APIs that you want in the external world. So that's
it has like a thing where you can import in all the say for a specific company, say you could have like a Shardus import, you import it and have all the functions in there, and you can just drag them out like what do you want to do. You want to send a function, send a message, and then you link them together and then run your process.
Right, absolutely. And the other thing is that like with Shardus, there's tons of Node.js libraries that are out there, and you can just bring those libraries in. Like let's say you needed to hit some APIs on Twitter and have your nodes access those APIs. You could bring in an NPM library to access Twitter or other social networks and use those libraries along with Shardus, right? And so now your server is pretty powerful. Those are things that you wouldn't be able to do if you just deployed a smart contract, deployed something on some, Ethereum or another smart contract platform. All right, any other questions? Well, you guys have been asking a lot of really good questions, and it's been great answering your questions, and hopefully you learned a lot more about Shardus and what we're building. We're right here in Dallas, and if you have any questions, you can contact me at omar@shardus.com or greg@shardus.com. And we'd love to meet up with you if you have any projects in mind that you think could use Shardus. Also, if you see any way that you can maybe contribute to the project and want to start earning Shardus tokens, please reach out to us. You know best what you're good at, and if you see that hey, your project could use some of our help, we definitely want to talk to you. So again, thank you for coming out, and look forward to seeing you again at our next quarterly event.